Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your sources and really try to unearth some fascinating insights.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're embarking on, well, quite a profound journey, I think. We're aiming to help create a comprehensive audio guide to Book 3 of the glorious Vishnu Purana, a really significant ancient text.
Indeed. And this particular deep dive is all about Book 3, which is aptly titled Society. Our mission really is to navigate its 18 chapters, chapter by chapter, in strict order.
Right.
We'll be extracting the major cosmological, symbolic, and philosophical teachings, presenting each one as a sacred unit, just as the source requested.
So think of it as a carefully curated exploration.
Yeah.
Looking at divine structure, ancient wisdom, the very fabric of existence described there.
Exactly.
We'll delve into, well, everything from these vast cycles of time, the organization of sacred texts, detailed ethical codes for daily living.
The deep significance of rituals.
Yeah, and even some surprising warnings, right? About straying from the path of truth. So yeah, get ready for some potentially illuminating discoveries.
Let's begin our journey then. Chapter 1. The past and present Manvantaras.
Okay.
It starts with Maitreya, who's always curious, asking of the Manvantaras. These are cosmic ages, you could say, each one overseen by a divine ruler, a Manu.
A Manu, got it.
Parashara then responds very systematically. He lists the 6 past Manus, Svayabhuva, Svarachya, Uttama, Tamasa, Raivata, and Kakko.
And then we meet the current one.
Yes, the 7th Manu, who is Vaivasvata, famously known as the sun's own son.
The sun's own son.
Okay, and the text really paints a rich picture here. It details the specific deities, the divine king's figures like Vaipachit and Sushanti, and the sages like the 7 sons of Asita, all associated with each of these Manvantaras. It's quite a tapestry.
That sounds incredibly detailed.
It is, and here's something really striking. It reveals that 4 of these, Manusvaratya, Uttama, Tamasa, and Raivata, are actually descendants of the sage king Priyavrata.
Oh, really?
Yes, and this lineage was specifically granted to him by Vien. It really emphasizes how Vien's omnipresent energy, infuses all of creation. He manifests as a deity in each cosmic age to preserve order.
Right, like a stabilizing force. Is there an example?
Absolutely. In our current Vaivasvata Manvantara, Vien appeared as Valana.
Ah, the divine dwarf.
The very one, famously conquering the threefold world in just 3 strides. And the name View itself, it's explained here, it comes from the root
Vish, meaning?
enter, because he infuses the Sanskrit as Vyam. He infuses the entire world.
He enters into everything. Makes sense.
So the chapter concludes by really driving home a core philosophical point. All these divine figures, gods, Manus, sages, kings, they're ultimately expressions of Vien's boundless might.
Wow. Okay.
So ends chapter 1 in book 3 of the glorious Vishnu Purana.
Okay, so exploring those past cosmic ages.
Yeah.
It naturally leads to the next question, doesn't it? What about the future?
Exactly. Maitreya asks just that. And this brings us to chapter 2, the future Manvantaras.
And what does Parashara say here?
He responds with a really intriguing story. It involves the sun, his wife Sanya, and her shadow replica, Chaya.
A shadow replica. Interesting.
Yes. And this celestial union produces several offspring, including the future 8th Manu, Savaron. His name, Savaron, apparently denotes his complexion being the same as his elder brothers.
Okay.
We also learn about the divine architect Vijakarman. He skillfully pared back about 1/8 of the sun's intense energy because it was too much for Sanyu.
Right. So what happened to that energy? Was it just lost?
No. And this is what's truly fascinating, this sort of cosmic economy. The residual blazing energy wasn't wasted at all.
Okay.
It was ingeniously fashioned into powerful divine weapons. We're talking Vish's discus, Shiva's trident, Kubera's palanquin, Kartikeya's lance.
Wow. So recycled divine power, essentially.
Exactly. It shows a universe where even intense leftover energy is transformed for a purpose.
That's quite a concept.
The chapter then briefly outlines the subsequent future Manus, from the 9th, Dakasavardi, all the way to the 14th, Baucha. It notes the shifts in divine kings and sages.
Any notable figures?
Yes, it mentions Bali, son of Virokana, from the underworld. He's set to be king of gods in the Sabrdi period.
Okay, Bali, got it.
And this then brings us to the grand scale of cosmic time. A kapalpa, which is like a vast cosmic day,
Right.
consists of 1,000 cycles of the 4 ages, the yugas, and a kalpa is completed after 14 Manvantaras.
14 Manus, 1,000 Yuga cycles. That's immense.
It is, and following this, the universe enters a cosmic night. Vishnu, taking the form of Brahma, reposes on the serpent Saya.
Having done what?
Having absorbed all three worlds, he rests, then reawakens and recreates them all anew.
A complete cycle of dissolution and creation.
Precisely. And this cyclical nature extends to Vishnu's role in each yuga. He's Kapila, teaching knowledge in the Kāla age, a universal monarch in Treta, Vedavyasa, dividing the Vedas in Dvapara.
And finally, Kalki at the end of Kali Yuga.
Exactly. Guiding sinners, it illustrates the complete cycle of cosmic preservation and renewal.
A truly grand vision.
So ends chapter 2 in book 3 of the glorious Vishnu Purana.
All right, so after the cosmic cycles, where do we go next? We mentioned Vedavyasa.
Yes, that leads us perfectly into chapter 3. The Vyasas arrange the datas, the syllable O.
Oh.
Maitreya's question here is about how the Vedas are actually organized in each age.
And the answer?
Parshara explains that, well, as humanity's courage, strength, and energy diminish over time.
Which they do, according to the texts.
Right, so Vyasa himself descends as Vedavyasa in each Dvapara age. His purpose is to divide the single original Veda into many branches, making it accessible for universal benefit.
So Vyasa isn't just one person, it's a recurring role.
Exactly. And a striking detail here is the lineage. 28 Vedavyasas are said to have already appeared just in this current Vivasvata Manvantara.
28. Including who?
Well, figures like self-existent Brahma, the patriarch Manu, even Parjara himself, the narrator. And it notes that Drasa's son, Draui, will be the next Vyasa.
Fascinating lineage. And then, O.
Yes, the chapter shifts to this profound philosophical teaching, the syllable O. It's explained as the eternal, absolute Brahman.
The ultimate reality.
Precisely. And it's called that because of its inherent greatness, Bhadvat, and its capacity to strengthen Bhadvat.
Greatness and strengthening power.
And O's fundamental role is highlighted by its invocation as earth, sky, and heaven, Bur, Bhuva, Sva, across all four Vedas.
So it's central to all of them.
Absolutely. It's described as the cause of creation and destruction, the deepest secret of Mahat, the principle of greatness, and the unmanifest, undying power that achieves the purpose of the highest spirit.
That's incredibly profound for a single syllable.
It is. And what this implies, you see, is that the absolute, though indivisible and pure, is perceived as manifold, divided across all creation by those who see distinctions.
So our perception creates the divisions.
In a way, yes. This universal being embodies the essence of the Lug, Sama, and Yajur Vedas. It is their essence and the author, the source, of their countless branches.
Wow.
So ends chapter 3 in book 3 of the glorious Vishnu Purana.
So continuing with the Vedas, chapter 4 must delve deeper into their origins.
It does. Chapter 4, the origin of the four Vedas. It explains how they arose from that ancient single four-limbed Veda, which originally contained, get this, 100,000 verses.
100,000.
Yeah, and it was the source of all 10 kinds of sacrifice.
Incredible scale.
And the text reiterates that Vyasa, specifically Kikta Vaipayana Vyas in this context, is Lord Naraya, Vyu himself, which explains his unparalleled ability to arrange such a vast text.
Right, it takes a divine compiler.
Then we learn about Vyasa's four principal disciples. Each was assigned a specific Veda. Pila got the Eg Veda,
Okay.
Vaishampayana, the Yajur Veda, Jaimini, the Sama Veda, and Sumantu, the Atharva Veda.
A clear division of labor.
Yes. And another wise disciple, Romahara, was given the crucial role of narrating the histories and Puras, the Itihasa Pura,
The storyteller, essentially.
the keeper of the narratives. The chapter also explains how dividing the single Yajur Veda led to the fourfold Katarhotra sacrifice, with specific prayers assigned to different priests, like the Yaju's prayers going to the Advari priest.
It shows the practical ritual application of these divisions.
Exactly. And it illustrates this meticulous dedication to preserving and transmitting knowledge through these detailed lineages. For example, Pila, who got the Veda, he split it in two, and his students further subdivided those.
Ah, so it branches out.
Precisely. It shows how this ancient Veda forest, as it's sometimes called, organically grew from that single Veda tree planted by Vyasa.
A living tradition.
So ends chapter 4 in book 3 of the glorious Vyatarputa.
Now, the Yajur Veda division sounds interesting. What's the story there?
Well, that takes us to chapter 5, the branches of the Yajur Veda. And this involves quite a dramatic story centered on Vyasa's disciple Vaishampayana.
Okay, Grama involving ancient sages. Tell me more.
So there's this significant conflict between Vaishampayana and one of his disciples, Yajnavalkya, who was apparently highly virtuous, but also, well, quite outspoken.
Oh.
Vaishampayana had committed Brahminicide, a serious transgression. He asked his disciples to perform penance for him, but Yajnavalkya, he scornfully dismissed the other disciples as lazy, mediocre Brahmins.
Ouch, that wouldn't go down well.
It didn't. He incurred his guru's intense wrath, and the scene described is incredibly vivid. Yajnavalkya, in defiance, literally vomited the blood-stained Yaju's prayers in physical form and handed them back to his guru.
In physical form, yes. It's a powerful image. And from this astonishing act, the Taittiriya's texts get their name because the other disciples transformed into partridges to tira in Sanskrit, and they gobbled up these disgorged prayers.
Wow. Okay. Partridges eating prayers? And those disciples who did perform the penance for Vaishampayana, they became known as Karaka priests, from the word karana, meaning their undertaking.
So Yajnavalkya lost the Ayurveda knowledge.
Temporarily. Driven by his desire to regain it, he devoutly worships Surya, the sun god. And the prayer he offers is profound. He recognizes Savit, the inspirer aspect of the sun, as the door to liberation, the origin of the world, a form of Vidon, and even the syllable Ois itself.
A powerful plea to the sun.
And it works. The sun, appearing as a magnificent stallion, grants Yajnavalkya the Ayatayama prayers knowledge that was unknown even to his former guru, Vaishampayana.
So he received a unique transmission.
Exactly. And those who mastered these specific teachings became known as Vajins, meaning horse possessors, because the knowledge came from the sun in horse form. It's a beautiful narrative about devotion, conflict, and the unique transmission of spiritual knowledge.
It really is.
So ends chapter 5 in book 3 of the glorious Visnu Purana.
Okay, so we've covered O in Yajur. What about the Sama and Atharva Vedas?
Right, that's chapter 6, the branches of the Sama and Atharva Vedas, the Purashas. This section starts by briefly outlining how Jaimini, the disciple given the Sama Veda, organized it through his son and grandson. This led to different schools, described as northern and eastern singers.
Different schools of chanting?
Essentially, yes. It also details the branches of the Atharva Veda, arranged by Sumantu and his disciples. These divisions covered things like astrology, rules for sacrifice, mantras, and even spells.
A more practical, maybe esoteric Veda?
Often seen that way, yes. Then the text shifts focus, emphasizing the crucial role of the Puranas themselves.
Ah, the text we're reading from.
Exactly. Vyasa, we're told, compiled these extensive texts full of ancient myths, legends, historical accounts, and he entrusted them to his disciple Romaharja, the bard.
The storyteller we met earlier.
The same one. Romaharja's 6 disciples then developed 4 root compilations, which form the basis for texts like this very Vyant Pura.
It's like a genealogy of the texts themselves.
It is, and for anyone interested in the sheer scope of this literature, the chapter lists the 18 major Puras as Brahma, Padma, Vitan, Shiva, Bhagavata, and so on.
The Muppetiers.
Right. And it mentions their 5 core topics: the Punyalakarat, creation, recreations or secondary creations, genealogies of gods and sages, the Manvantaras we discussed, and the histories of royal dynasties.
A standard structure for a Puder.
Generally, yes. The chapter concludes by really highlighting the vast scope of traditional Indian knowledge. It mentions 14 and later 18 branches or vidyas.
Not just the Vedas.
No, it includes the Vedas and their supplements, but also practical fields like medicine, archery, Dhanurveda, performing arts, Gandharva Veda, and even governance, Arthashastra.
A holistic view of knowledge.
Very much so. And it beautifully reinforces the idea that the primal Veda is eternal, and its various branches are simply different expressions appearing to suit different times and needs.
Adapting to the ages.
So ends chapter 6 in book 3 of the glorious Visnu Purana.
Okay, that's a huge amount on the texts themselves. Where does the focus shift now? It feels like we're moving towards practice.
Exactly. Our journey takes a very practical turn with chapter 7, How to Escape Death. Yama's song.
Yama, the Lord of Death. So the big question.
The ultimate question, perhaps. Maitreya poses it very directly. How can one escape Yama's grip? Parashara frames his answer with a story related by Bhima to Nakula in the Mahabharata, recounting a secret dialogue between Yama and one of his minions.
A secret conversation between Death and his agent. What's the message?
The core insight is profound and quite striking. Yama instructs his servant, "Leave the devotees of Madhusudana, that's Vitu, alone, for I'm the lord of all." except the Vaishnavas.
Except the Vaishnavas. So devotees of Vishnu are outside his jurisdiction.
That's the implication. Yama clarifies his own position. He governs all beings based on their karma, their actions.
Right.
But he himself is subject to Hari, Vishnu, who is his superior in this cosmic governance. It shows a hierarchy even among these powerful divine forces.
So Vishnu is the ultimate authority.
Yes. And what this chapter really reveals is a unifying truth. Hari, or Vya, is present in all beings. The analogy used is gold. It's one substance, but it can be crafted into diverse ornaments. Beings, though they might seem separate due to impure qualities or ignorance, ultimately converge with that one eternal being, Ve'u.
So how does one become a devotee of Vaikhava that Yama must leave alone?
The text provides a detailed portrait. A true devotee of Hari, a Vaikhava, is someone who adheres to their community traditions, their Dharma. They maintain equanimity towards friend and foe alike. They take nothing unnecessarily, harm no one.
Ethical conduct is key.
Absolutely. Purity of mind, unstained by folly, always holding Janardana, another name for Vio, in their heart. Such a person finds another's hidden gold no more valuable than a piece of straw. They're free from anger, selfishness, pride.
It's a high standard.
It is. And conversely, it defines who is not a devotee. Thieves, those who harm others, speak falsely, neglect sacred duties, are deceitful, attached to vice, or vilify good people.
So the path is clear.
Yes, the ultimate message is powerful. When eternal Vishnu resides in a person's heart, their sins are destroyed. They are destined for a realm beyond Yama's power. Because as the text beautifully asks, how can darkness reign when the sun is shining?
That's a wonderful image. A timeless message on ethical living and devotion as the path to liberation.
Precisely. So ends chapter 7 in book 3 of the glorious Vishnu.
Okay, so devotion to Vishnu is the key to escaping Yama. But the text mentioned adhering to community traditions, Dharma. How does that work?
Excellent question. That leads directly into chapter 8, the four communities. Maitreya asks exactly that. How should one worship Vishnu to escape samsara, the cycle of rebirth, and attain rewards, including ultimate liberation, nirvana?
And the answer connects to social structure.
Yes. Arva, another sage figure, explains to King Sagara that Vishnu is primarily pleased when a person practices the Dharma, the prescribed traditions and duties of their community, their varya. There's really no other path that pleases him as much.
So fulfilling your social role is a form of worship.
In essence, yes. Harming others, for instance, is seen as directly injuring Hari, because Hari is in all beings.
Right, that connects back. So what are these duties?
The chapter meticulously details the duties for each of the four communities, or Varnas. Brahmins are focused on studying the Vedas, practicing generosity, worshiping gods through sacrifices, maintaining sacred fires, and acting with benevolence towards all.
Study and ritual.
Primarily. Kshatriyas, the warrior ruler class, should make donations, offer sacrifices, study Vedas, but their main focus is military life and protecting the realm. A king's adherence to Dharma ensures merit accrues to him.
Protection and governance.
Vaishyas, the merchants and agriculturalists, are to engage in animal husbandry, trade, and farming, alongside study, sacrifice, and generosity.
The commerce and production.
And Sudras, the service community, are primarily to serve the other three twice-born orders. They can sustain themselves through service, trade, or craft, and perform rituals for ancestors or hire others to do so.
Service and support.
But what's really striking here, and important for us, are the common virtues prescribed for every single order and stage of life.
Oh, like what?
Things like acquiring wealth, honestly, for dependence, compassion, patience, humility, truthfulness, purity, resilience, cheerfulness, eloquence, friendliness, generosity, kindness.
So these ethical principles underpin the whole system.
Exactly. They unite society regardless of one's specific role or dharma. The text also acknowledges practical adaptations needed in times of strife, like a Brahmin adopting Kshatriya or Vaishya practices if necessary.
Some flexibility.
Some, but with clear warnings against just mixing practices haphazardly or adopting the ways of a Shudra if it can be avoided by the higher Varnas.
Interesting nuances there.
So ends chapter 8 in book 3 of the glorious Dvapara.
All right, so we have the duties based on community, the Varda Dharma. Yeah. What about stages of life? Does that factor in?
It absolutely does. Building on community duties, chapter 9 covers the 4 stages of life. Arva outlines the four ashramas, which are seen as structured paths towards spiritual fulfillment throughout one's life.
The ashramas. Okay, what's the first one?
First is the Brahmacharan. This is the celibate student stage. The focus here is on devout living, usually in the guru's home, mastering the Vedas, serving the master, and observing vows with purity of conduct.
Intense period of learning and discipline.
Very much so. Then comes the Guhasta, the householder. After finishing education, one marries according to proper rites and diligently fulfills family and social duties, earns money honestly, and honors the ancestral spirits, pittis, devas, and sages.
A stage of active participation in the world.
Exactly. And there's a profound emphasis here on hospitality. This is really interesting. A householder is seen as providing sustenance and refuge for beings in all the other stages.
Ah, so they support the others.
Yes. And turning away a guest, especially a traveler, is considered a major fault. The text says the guest leaves his misdeeds with the householder and takes that person's good luck with him.
Wow, that's a heavy karmic weight attached to hospitality.
Immense. It underscores the responsibility of the householder. The third stage is vanaprastha, the forest dweller or hermit.
When does one enter this?
Typically in ripe old age, when householder duties are fulfilled, maybe grandchildren are born. One ventures into the forest, sometimes with their spouse, living austerely on leaves and roots, sleeping on the ground, enduring hardships.
Why? What's the purpose?
To detach from worldly life and purify oneself. The text says they burn away misdeeds like fire burns fuel. It's a transition towards renunciation.
Preparing for the final stage.
Which is the sannyasin, the mendicant, or renunciating. This involves shedding all affection for children, possessions, even one's spouse if they didn't come to the forest. Becoming free from selfishness, equally disposed to all beings, renouncing all attachment.
Complete detachment.
Yes. The mendicant moves frequently one night in a village, maybe 5 in a city, specifically to avoid forming new attachments. They internalize the sacrifice, lighting a sacrificial fire within their own body through austerity and meditation. By attaining liberation, they reach the tranquil realm of Brahma.
A complete journey through life's phases.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a structured approach, illustrating how life can be lived purposefully, guiding individuals through different phases of responsibility and renunciation. Each stage contributes both to society and to personal spiritual liberation.
A very ordered view of life.
So ends Chapter 9 in Book 3 of the glorious Vishnu Purana.
Okay, this structure is becoming clearer. We've got community roles, life stages. What about key life events like birth and marriage? Are there specific rituals?
Yes, absolutely. That's covered in Chapter 10, Birth and Marriage. Sagara asks Arva about the rituals and rites performed by people.
What does he say about birth?
Arva details the joyous birth rituals performed by the father. This includes performing a shraddha, an ancestral rite, but one focused on welcoming the new life and making offerings to specific spirits called the Nandamukhas for the child's well-being.
A spiritual welcome?
Precisely. Then there's the naming ceremony, typically on the 10th day. The rules are quite prescriptive.
Oh, how so?
The child's name should ideally begin with a deity's name, and it should have a second part that befits their community: Sharman for Brahmins, Varman for Klayas, Gupta for Vaishyas, Dasa for Shudras.
Specific suffixes for each Vardya.
Yes, and strict guidelines about avoiding names with negative connotations, ensuring an even number of syllables and making sure they're easy to pronounce.
Practical considerations alongside the spiritual.
Exactly. The text then addresses marriage. This is the point where, after education, the Brahmacharan stage, one chooses whether to enter the householder stage, or perhaps remain a lifelong celibate, or become an ascetic or mendicant later.
The choice.
Yes. And if choosing marriage, the text gets incredibly specific about choosing a spouse, particularly the physical characteristics a wise man should avoid in a potential bride.
Avoid. What kind of things? This sounds potentially awkward.
It can seem that way to modern ears, definitely. The list is quite extensive and surprising. It includes not being bald, nor excessively hairy, not too dark or too pale, having no extra limbs, no signs of impurity, no inherited deformities.
Wow.
It even extends to detailed facial features, teeth, and believe it or not, having dimples when laughing is apparently something to avoid.
Dimples are bad. That's unexpected.
It's certainly specific. There's also the traditional rule for marital suitability based on lineage. Marrying a girl who is 5 degrees removed on his mother's side and 7 degrees removed on his father's side.
Rules against marrying close relatives.
Yes, codified quite precisely. The chapter also briefly mentions the 8 traditional forms of marriage, ranging from the most esteemed, the Brahma form, to the vilest, the Paishaka form. It emphasizes choosing the form recommended for one's community to yield magnificent rewards.
Different ways to formalize a union.
Right. Overall, this chapter really vividly illustrates the profound importance placed on rituals for sanctifying life's major transitions. Birth, naming, marriage, they reflect a society where personal choices are deeply interwoven with spiritual and social order.
Every step has significance.
So ends chapter 10 in book 3 of the glorious Dvapara.
All right, so after a marriage, one enters the householder stage. You mentioned the importance of hospitality, but what about the day-to-day rituals?
Ah, yes, that brings us to the very detailed chapter 11, Rituals of the Householder. Arva continues his extensive guidance on proper conduct called Sadakara. Following these rules is said to ensure success both in this world and the next.
So a guide to righteous daily living, what does it cover?
It starts with the daily routine, waking up early at Brahma Muhurta, which is about 90 minutes before dawn.
Okay.
The first thing to do is meditate on virtue, Dharma, prosperity, Artha, and love pleasure, Kama, aligning one's goals for the day.
Setting intentions.
Exactly. Then there are strict rules even for bodily functions, like which direction to face for excretion, southwesterly apparently, washing hands and feet afterwards, and even specific types of earth not to use for cleaning.
Very specific personal hygiene rules linked to ritual purity.
Precisely. Morning rituals include bathing, making libations, offerings of water to the gods, sages, and ancestral spirits. And there's a beautiful prayer included, offering water for the satisfaction of all these beings enduring torment in the hells, acknowledging suffering everywhere.
A universal compassion element.
Yes, and also for my kin and those who aren't, and any beings who desire an offering of water. It's quite encompassing. Then come domestic rituals, fire sacrifices, Agnihotra if applicable, and specific offerings to household deities and universal lords in various directions around the house.
A lot to do before breakfast.
It seems so. And then we come back to hospitality, presented again as a supreme duty. A householder should actively wait in the courtyard for potential guests, offer them a seat, wash their feet, provide food.
Regardless of who they are.
Yes. The text says, without asking which branch of the Veda he recites or about his lineage, a householder should regard a guest as Brahma.
Treating the guest as the absolute itself. That's powerful.
It is. And the consequences of failing this duty are stark. One who feeds himself but doesn't honor hungry guests goes to hell. Again, the idea that they leave their misdeeds and take your good luck, the text stresses all the gods are present in the guest.
A constant reminder of the sacred in the everyday. What about meals?
Also incredibly detailed. Rules for dining purity, the sequence of taste, sweet first, then sour salty, then pungent astringent last. Mindful eating in silence. And there's a powerful prayer for digestion, recognizing Visnu as the consumer, the food, and the digestion itself.
Vien is even in the digestive fire.
That's the idea. Finally, the chapter covers evening and marital relations, performance of Sunday rituals at dusk, and then very strict guidelines for marital intimacy.
More rules.
Yes. Approaching one's wife only at the proper fertile season, at auspicious times, under certain astrological asterisms, specifically those with masculine names, on even nights after menstruation.
Wow, incredibly specific timing.
And there's a long list of conditions to avoid in a woman at that time if she's unwashed, unwell, menstruating, unattractive, pregnant, unwilling, unskilled, etc., and conditions for the man himself to avoid.
A complex set of factors.
Very, and here's where it gets really interesting, or perhaps severe, depending on your perspective.
Yeah.
Specific days when intercourse is absolutely forbidden, like the 8th and 14th lunar days, new and full months, when the sun enters new zodiac sign.
And the consequence for breaking these rules.
The text states one will feed on excrement and urine in hell, also forbidden locations like sacred sites or crossroads, and the severe sin of approaching another man's wife is emphasized, leading to a short life in hell.
So Dharma permeates every aspect of life, even the most intimate.
Absolutely. This chapter powerfully demonstrates that holistic nature. Every action, from bathing to dining to sex, is imbued with spiritual significance and karmic consequence. Physical and spiritual purity are deeply intertwined.
A complete system for living.
So ends chapter 11 in book 3 of the glorious Dvapara.
That chapter was incredibly detailed about the householder's duties. Does it continue in the next chapter?
It does, chapter 12. The conduct of the wise continues to delineate this extensive code of conduct, focusing on actions that promote both spiritual purity and social harmony for a wise householder.
Okay, what kind of conduct are we talking about now?
It covers personal discipline first, things like worshiping gods, cattle, Brahmins, and teachers daily, maintaining a good appearance, clean clothes, pleasant scent, perhaps wearing gemstones, avoiding negative physical habits like grinding your teeth, picking your nose, or laughing too loudly.
Self-control and respectability.
Yes. Then it moves into social ethics. Never taking another's property, never speaking harshly, always being polite and truthful, but crucially, without mentioning the faults of others.
Avoiding gossip and slander.
Explicitly. Also, avoiding coveting another's wife or actively seeking enmity with anyone.
Maintaining peaceful relations.
Right. And there are warnings about companionship. A wise person should never befriend or travel alone with people described as odious, wicked, drunk, aggressive, or louse-infested, or with prostitutes, liars, or cheats.
Choose your company wisely.
Very much so. Then practical safety and prudence. Avoid dangerous situations, don't dive into fast rivers, enter burning houses, or climb unstable trees. Be cautious at night, especially near crossroads, sacred trees, or cremation grounds.
Common sense advice, really.
Mixed with ritual caution, yes. And more strict rules on purity concerning observing auspicious bodies like the sun or moon, handling corpses, avoiding unclean places like where hair or bones are discarded. Also, never bathe, sleep, or drink naked. And never perform rituals with a loose lower garment, meaning improperly tied.
Maintaining ritual correctness in daily life.
Exactly. And here's a nuanced point about truthfulness that I think is really interesting.
Oh.
It says, a wise person, therefore, speaks the truth when it's pleasing to another, but when the truth is painful, he stays silent.
So truth isn't always the highest value if it causes unnecessary pain.
It seems so, but it adds a layer. It's better to offer something beneficial, even if it's hard to hear, like advice or a warning, than to speak pleasant words that are ultimately unhelpful or untrue.
Oh, a sophisticated take on communication ethics. Speak truth, but kindly. Speak benefit, even if difficult. Avoid pleasant falsehoods.
Precisely. It shows a remarkably refined understanding of human interactions. The ultimate path to welfare and liberation, the chapter concludes, is for the wise to strive with body, voice, and mind for the benefit of all living beings.
Universal benefit.
Yes. And heaven is considered the minimum reward for those who calm the angry, treat everyone as kin, and reassure the timid. It's a dense, practical guide to ethical living, emphasizing self-restraint, social responsibility, and thoughtful communication.
Foundational for both worldly success and spiritual progress.
So ends chapter 12 in book 3 of the Glorious Vipudia.
Okay, we've covered daily conduct extensively. What about those major life events again? You mentioned birth earlier, but what about death rituals?
Right. The focus shifts again in chapter 13, rituals relating to birth and death. We move from general daily conduct to the specific rituals marking these pivotal moments.
So, back to birth first.
Briefly, yes. It reiterates the father's role in performing birth rituals and that joyous shurda for the newborn, including specific offerings and circumambulations for the child's well-being and protection.
A confirmation of the start of life rituals.
Exactly. But then it provides a detailed, step-by-step account of the very solemn procedures for the deceased.
The funeral rites.
Yes. Washing and garlanding the corpse, carrying it for cremation outside the village, the cremation itself, and then the relatives' ritual immersion in water, usually a river, while facing south, and offering handfuls of water, jalanjali, to the departed spirit.
A structured process for handling death.
Very structured. And then follows the period of ritual impurity, ashuka, for the family. The duration varies based on their community, their vada.
How long?
10 days for a Brahmin family, 12 for a Kshatriya, 2 weeks for a Vaishya, and a full month for a Shudra family.
Longer for the Shudras. Interesting.
Yes, and during this impurity period, certain activities are suspended, things like giving gifts, performing major sacrifices, regular Vedic studies. It's a time of mourning and separation.
A liminal period.
Exactly. A crucial ritual discussed then is the Ikodiya ceremony. This is performed monthly for the first year after death.
Monthly. Why?
It's specifically designed to purify the deceased spirit, the Treta, and elevate it to the status of an ancestral spirit, a pit, allowing it to join the collective ancestors. It involves specific offerings, usually of rice balls and pitas, and the symbolic pouring of the deceased water vessel into 3 vessels representing the father, grandfather, and great-grandfather.
Yeah, helping the soul transition.
Precisely. This chapter really profoundly highlights the importance of ancestral veneration in ancient Indian thought. These elaborate rituals aren't just for show, they're seen as essential for ensuring the proper spiritual transition of the departed and for maintaining the purity and well-being of the living family. It shows a deeply integrated view of life, death, and the continuity across generations.
Connecting the living and the dead through ritual.
So ends chapter 13 in book 3 of the glorious Purana.
That eco-deist ceremony sounds vital. Are there other rituals for ancestors? You mentioned the Shudha at birth.
Yes, the Shudha ritual is central, and chapter 14 focuses exclusively on the Shudha ritual for the ancestral spirits and its really expansive benefits.
Expansive how?
Well, performing a Shudha isn't just seen as feeding one's own immediate ancestors. It's believed to nourish the entire cosmos.
The whole cosmos.
Yes, from the highest gods like Brahma and Indra, down through humans, beasts, birds, serpents, even creeping things. Everyone is thought to benefit from the offerings made with devotion during a Shudha.
That gives it huge significance.
It really does. The chapter details many specific auspicious times for performing Shudha. The new moon day, Abhashya, is particularly important, but also equinoxes, solstices, eclipses, certain lunar mansions, nakshatras.
So aligning with cosmic cycles.
Exactly. And different timings offer varying durations of satisfaction for the ancestors. For instance, performing it under the Anuradha, Vishaka, or Swati nakshatras satisfies them for 8 years. Under Puya, Raudra, or Punarvasu, 12 years.
Long-lasting benefits.
And under Dhaniha, Purvapadrapada, or Sattavishak, the benefit is described as much as even deities rarely do, practically immeasurable.
Incredible.
And here's something really interesting. Sanat Kumara's song about the Yugadi days. These are specific days marking the beginning of the Yugas within a cycle. They're considered endlessly auspicious. Offering just water mixed with sesame seeds on these days is said to be equivalent to performing a Shudha for 1,000 years.
Just water and sesame, the power of auspicious timing.
Immense power. Then the chapter presents the ancestors' own song. They sing about their longing for offerings from their descendants, particularly those who are generous and don't hide their wealth. They promise to be reborn in the lineage of such descendants.
A direct appeal from the ancestors.
Yes. But, very importantly, there's profound compassion shown for the poor. If someone cannot afford elaborate offerings,
What can they do?
they can offer just a few sesame seeds or give some fodder to a cow or even just go out into the sunlight, raise their arms to the sun, and declare their poverty and inability to offer more. Even this simple, sincere act is said to fully satisfy the ancestors.
That's beautiful. Sincerity over substance.
Absolutely. This chapter highlights that deep spiritual connection to ancestors, the cosmic impact of seemingly small acts of devotion when done sincerely, and this profound compassion embedded within the tradition. Intention is paramount, regardless of material means.
A really touching aspect to the ritual.
So ends chapter 14 in book 3 of the glorious Purana.
Okay, so the Shirza is vital. Auspicious times matter, and even the poor can participate sincerely. But how does one actually conduct a proper Shraddha? What are the rules?
Now we get into the really intricate details. Chapter 15, Conducting a Shraddha. This section lays out the specific rules, focusing heavily on who is worthy, and maybe more pointedly, who is unworthy to be involved.
Unworthy. Who gets excluded?
Well, first, the worthy participants. There's a detailed list of Brahmins considered suitable to be invited and fed during the ritual. These include scholars, ascetics, those who know specific Vedic texts, like the 3 Nasikatas or 3 Madhu sections, and even certain relatives of the householder performing the rite, like a son-in-law or maternal uncle.
So, learned and virtuous Brahmins are preferred.
Yes. But then comes the striking list of those not to be invited. It's very specific.
Like who?
False friends, people with bad fingernails or discolored teeth, the impotent, those known to have sexually assaulted young women, soma sellers, thieves, slanderers, those who've abandoned their sacred fires or Vedic studies.
Wow. A mix of moral failings and physical markers.
Yes, and also those with impure family connections, like being married to a Shutra woman, if the Brahmin is performing it, or those who make a living from officiating at idol temples, Devalaka. The list is long and quite revealing about social values and purity concerns.
It really sets a high bar for who can participate.
It does. The procedure itself also involves strict protocols for the host. They must refrain from anger, haste, carelessness, and importantly, sexual intercourse on the day of the Shirada and often the day before and after. These are considered major obstacles to the ritual's efficacy.
Mental and physical purity are crucial for the host, too.
Absolutely. And there's a particularly stark consequence mentioned for breaking the rule about sex during the Shirada period.
What is
The text states it causes one's ancestors to drown in a pool of semen for a month, a very graphic warning.
extremely graphic? Okay, so the actual steps.
Meticulous steps involve welcoming the invited Brahmins respectfully, offering food oblations into the sacred fire first, then serving the Brahmins delicious food with utmost devotion and care. Specific mantras are recited to ward off malevolent spirits, rakasas, who might try to spoil the offerings. Offerings are made separately to paternal and maternal ancestors.
A carefully orchestrated ritual.
Very. And there's a profound belief mentioned. Having even a single true ascetic, yati, present and properly honored at a shraddha can lead all participants, including the host and ancestors, to the further shore, meaning towards liberation.
The power of a single realized being.
Exactly. This chapter really reveals the extraordinary precision and the intense emphasis on spiritual purity in these ancient rituals. It's not just the actions, but the company kept, the mental state of the participants, the food offered, everything is crucial for the efficacy of the offering and the ultimate well-being of the ancestors.
Every detail matters profoundly.
So ends chapter 15 in book 3 of the glorious Vitura.
You mentioned the food offered being crucial. Does the next chapter go into detail about what food is acceptable or not for a shraddha?
It does exactly that. Chapter 16, Shraddha offerings. This chapter explores the specific types of food and other items considered suitable, or, just as importantly, unsuitable for these ancestral offerings.
Okay, what's considered good? Are there any surprises?
Well, perhaps surprising to some modern perspectives, there's a list of animal flesh offerings that are said to nourish the ancestors for varying durations. Fish satisfies them for 2 months, deer for 3, sheep for 4, birds for 5, all the way up to wild boar for 10 months, and wild ox or hare for a full year.
Meat offerings were standard practice then.
Clearly sanctioned for Shraddha in this text, yes, and certain offerings are said to provide eternal nourishment. This includes the flesh of a specific type of long-billed bird called vadlihasa, rhinoceros flesh.
Rhinoceros, wow.
Yes, rhinoceros flesh, the herb sacred basil, tulasi is implied, though the text might use another term, and honey. These provide undying satisfaction.
Eternal nourishment. Interesting category. What about non-meat foods?
Specific grains like small grain rice, shimaka, barley, wheat, and sesame are highlighted as suitable. Milk products, fruits, and roots are generally good.
Standard staple foods.
Right. But then comes the fascinating list of forbidden items. Things to avoid.
Like what?
Grain that hasn't been consecrated from the first harvest of the season, nirvana before the ritual. Certain legumes like black-eyed peas, rajamal, and lentils, masura. Vegetables like garlic, certain types of gourds, onions, leeks.
Garlic and onions often feature in these lists.
Yes, considered tamasic or potentially impure in some ritual contexts. Also, sea salt and rock salt produced from evaporation are forbidden, as are other unspecified, unrecommended substances. Water drawn at night or water with an unpleasant smell shouldn't be used.
Even the water has rules.
And milk from certain animals, specifically those with uncloven hooves, like camels, sheep, or buffalo, though cows are fine. Also milk from a cow whose calf has recently died.
Very specific prohibitions. Does it mention who shouldn't see the shraddha?
Yes, building on the previous chapter, it lists individuals whose mere presence can spoil a shraddha because neither deities nor ancestors will accept the offerings if they witness it.
Who's on this list?
Eunuchs, outcasts, heretics, drunks, people with certain diseases or invalidities, roosters, dogs, pigs, and significantly naked persons, also menstruating women, or anyone ritually impure.
Naked persons again. We need to get back to that.
We will. This list reinforces why shraddha should ideally be conducted in enclosed, protected spaces. Sometimes sesame seeds are strewn around specifically to drive off evil spirits or prevent inauspicious gazes.
Treating a sacred, pure space.
Exactly. These incredibly detailed dietary and observational rules really illuminate the meticulous nature of ancient religious practice. And the profound belief in subtle energies and influences how purity, food, company, even sight can impact the spiritual efficacy of these vital rituals.
A world governed by subtle connections.
So ends chapter 16 in book 3 of the glorious Visnu Purana.
Okay, you mentioned naked persons being excluded twice now. Chapter 17 must finally address that. The protection afforded by the Vedas. Vishnu's phantom.
Yes, exactly. Maitreya opens this chapter with that very intriguing question. Who is actually considered naked in this context?
And the answer isn't literal nudity.
No. Parasha reveals that naked here doesn't necessarily mean physically unclothed. It symbolically refers to an individual who casts off the threefold garment of the Yajur and Samavedas.
Ah, so someone who rejects or abandons Vedic knowledge and practice.
Precisely. They are considered symbolically naked, unprotected, and therefore sinful and inauspicious, especially in ritual contexts.
That makes sense of the earlier prohibition. So the Vedas are like protective clothing.
A spiritual armor, you could say? The narrative then shifts dramatically. It tells a story of the gods, devas, being utterly routed in battle by the daityas, the demons or demigods.
A classic conflict.
Yeah.
What happened?
The gods retreat in desperation to the northern shore of the Milky Ocean. There, they undertake severe austerities, tapas, and sing an elaborate hymn of praise to Lord Vitam, seeking his help.
Calling on the ultimate power.
Yes, and this hymn is a profound philosophical moment. The deities acknowledge Vitan as the fundamental reality underlying all existence. He is manifest in all forms: earth, water, fire, wind, the directions, the mind, the self.
Everything is Vietnam.
Everything. Brahma, Indra, the sun, the moon, even the daityas themselves who are defeating them. Ultimately, he is the formless, purest absolute beyond all description or definition.
A statement of non-duality from the gods themselves.
It is, and what's particularly striking is that the gods, despite acknowledging they too were aspects of Vitam, admit their perception of division is due to ignorance, avita. And because of this, they are unable to defeat the daityas, who crucially are adhering to Vedic injunctions at this point and gaining power from them.
So the deities are following the rules and winning.
At this stage, yes. They are powerful because they follow Dharma. So Vion needs a different strategy. To aid the gods, Lord Vion creates a phantom form, Mayamoha, illusion and delusion, from his own body.
An illusory being. For what purpose?
This phantom's specific divine purpose is to confuse the daityas, to lead them away from the Vedic path, away from Dharma, thus making them vulnerable and stripping them of their power.
Deliberate deception by Vion.
Yes, but for the sake of restoring cosmic balance, Vion explains that he is inherent in all creation, and those who offend or abandon the Vedas, the source of Dharma, will ultimately be destroyed by him as they lose their protective spiritual garment.
Wow. So adherence to the Vedas is power, and abandoning them leads to vulnerability.
That's the core message here. This chapter offers a stunning example of how these ancient texts explored the nature of truth, divine intervention, strategy, and the critical importance of adhering to sacred traditions. The idea of a deity deliberately creating delusion to restore cosmic order is, well, it's a particularly thought-provoking concept.
It really is. Using illusion to uphold truth, in a way.
So ends chapter 17 in book 3 of the glorious Vishnu Purana.
Okay, so Vion creates this phantom, Mayamoha, to lead the daityas astray from the Vedas. How does it actually do that? This must be chapter 18.
It is our final chapter for book 3, chapter 18. The phantom confounds the demigods. The narrative picks up right there, with Vinoni's phantom on its mission.
How does it approach them?
First, the phantom appears as a naked holy man, shaven-headed and carrying a peacock feather.
Naked again, but this time it's the phantom.
Yes, embodying the nakedness of being outside the Vedas. The description is a fairly clear, though perhaps polemical, reference to Digambara Jain ascetics.
Okay. What does this phantom teacher say?
He cunningly teaches the daityas that vice is actually virtue and truth is falsehood. He encourages them to abandon Vedic sacrifices and rituals, leading them away from the path that was giving them strength. Many daityas trust his teachings, convert, and become known as arhats, meaning worthy ones, a term used in Jainism.
So the first wave falls to this Jain-like teaching.
Apparently so, according to this text. Later, the same phantom, Mayamoha, takes on a different guise. This time, monkish saffron robes.
Ah, suggesting Buddhism now.
It seems a clear illusion, yes. He approaches another group of daityas who hadn't converted yet. He teaches them to abandon the false religion of the Vedas, particularly condemning animal sacrifice as cruel and pointless. He proclaims that this whole world consists of knowledge and is without foundation, ultimately plagued by passion and suffering. The text even subtly plays on words like utiet, to understand, which is cognate with Buddha.
So a second wave is converted by this Buddhist-like teaching.
Yes, the Daitas, misled by these varied, contradictory, but appealingly anti-Vedic instructions, abandon the authority of the Vedas entirely. They start openly criticizing Vedic practices, calling animal sacrifice childish nonsense, questioning the efficacy of offering.
They've lost their armor.
Exactly. Stripped of the armor of true religion, their dharma, they become weak. When battle resumes with the gods, they are easily defeated.
The Phantom's mission is accomplished.
It is. Parashar then revisits the definition of nakedness. He expands it to include anyone who abandons the threefold Vedas, anyone who neglects obligatory rituals, mitra karma, or even someone who eats before honoring guests, gods, or ancestors.
Broadening the definition of neglecting Dharma.
Yes, and the text stresses the severe karmic consequences of associating with such naked individuals, such heretics, or those who neglect Dharma. It's said to cause a loss of one's own merit and potentially lead to hell.
Strong warnings about association.
Very strong. And here's where it gets really compelling, a final cautionary tale.
Oh.
It's the story of King Satyatanu and his devoted queen, Sabya. The king, despite being generally righteous, once had a brief, polite conversation with a heretic while he was observing a fast. Just a brief interaction.
And that had consequences.
Dire consequences, spanning lifetimes. Because of that association, even though brief and polite, he was reborn successively as a dog, then a jackal, a wolf, a vulture, and finally a crow.
Wow, descending through animal birth just for talking to a heretic.
That's the story. But his devoted queen, Sabya, miraculously retained her memory of her past lives through her own virtue. In each animal incarnation, she finds her husband, the former king, and reminds him of his past fault, that brief conversation.
She helps him remember across lifetimes.
Yes. Eventually, as a crow, he witnesses a great horse sacrifice. Remembering his queen's words, he manages to bathe in the water used for the concluding rituals of that sacrifice. And that purification, combined with the memory and repentance, finally leads to his salvation.
An incredible story about the dangers of heresy, the power of memory, devotion, and ritual purification.
Absolutely. It's a powerful conclusion to Book 3, illustrating the immense spiritual danger perceived in straying from sacred traditions, the profound and long-lasting karmic consequences, but also offering a remarkable testament to unwavering devotion and the possibility of redemption through remembrance and ritual.
A truly epic finale.
So ends Chapter 18 in Book 3 of the glorious Visnu Purana.
We've done it. We've journeyed through all 18 chapters of Book 3 of the Visnu Purana. From those vast cosmic cycles, the Manvantaras, the detailed lineages of Vedic knowledge, the Vyasas, the different branches, to that incredibly precise blueprint for a dharmic life, covering daily rituals, community duties, the stages of life, the profound significance of ancestral rites.
And we also explored those surprising depths of spiritual contamination. The power of truth versus delusion, seen especially in that phantom narrative.
Yeah. What really stands out, I think, is the Puraya's unwavering focus on Dharma righteous conduct, fulfilling one's duties as the path to well-being in this world and ultimately to liberation in the next.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the interconnectedness of everything. It reminds us, or at least suggests, that every action, maybe even every thought, has cosmic ripples. Nothing happens in isolation.
So as you, our listeners, reflect on these ancient teachings, maybe consider this provocative thought. How do these texts suggest that understanding the garment of your beliefs, your own Dharma, might be the ultimate protection in a world that's, let's face it, full of conflicting information and potential phantoms?
A powerful question to ponder. Thus concludes the major symbolic and narrative revelations of Book 3 of the glorious Visnu Purana.